Welcome, one and all, to Old School Lane Reads. Tonight's reading is Things I Can't Explain, a Clarissa novel written by Mitchell Kriegman. Tonight's reading is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda, and check out our archived podcasts on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, Overcast, and more. And now, Things I Can't Explain, a Clarissa novel. Chapter 3. Surprise! My father hollers across the lobby. Gee, you think? CCG looks from me to these two strangers who are charging towards us, then back to me. To say that seeing my dad and mom, aka Marshall and Janet, in New York is surreal would be an understatement for a couple of reasons. Reasons why seeing Marshall and Janet in NYC is surreal. Number 1, they live in Ohio. Number 2, they never called, emailed, texted, or sent out a homing pigeon with a note banded to its leg to tell me that they had plans to visit. Number 3, my parents aren't exactly what you call spontaneous, or at least they didn't used to be. Number 4, and finally, they're not together. And by that I mean they're separated, as in legally, you know, like Splitsville. Taking a trip to Reno, which basically entails paying some guy with a law degree to draw up some paper stating that they can no longer stand the thought of living under the same roof. And yet, here they are in New York City, unannounced, and, unless my eyes deceive me, together. I pounce on the together part and feel a surge of hope. This has to be good, right? Unless they're here to share the burden of informing me that the legal separation has evolved into a full-fledged divorce. That would not be good. Hi, Mom, I sputter as she arrived at the cart and flings her arms around me. Dad, hey, he leans in to kiss my cheek. Hi, sport. I blinked at them and go with the approved response to the situation and usually good for close encounters of an unexpected kind. What are you guys doing here? And as I think of it, I'm astonished that they've stumbled upon me at one of my random but regular coffee runs. I know Sigmund Freud said we always act according to our greatest desire, and there's no such thing as coincidence. Or was that Susie Orman, the Freud of the spreadsheet, talking about forbearance and student loan debt versus the desire to pay them off? I forget. The point is, it's pretty unbelievable that they're showing up here in this particular lobby, the scene of my former employee, as I happen to be working my flirt on CCG. We came to see our journalist's daughter, my mother offers brightly. Oh no, I'm putting it together as they speak. Oh, shit. It's been so long since we've seen you, she bubbles on. We just couldn't wait for you to find time to invite us, so we planned our own visit. Visit, ambush, tomato. We've heard so much about where you work, my father says. We were dying to see it. Impressive building architecturally, by the way. He nods towards the enormous pillars and marble-tiled walls. This lobby just screams big city newspaper excitement. No, he didn't just say that. As stunned as I am, I admit I'm feeling encouraged by the fact that Mom and Dad appear to be operating as a parental unit again. I don't care how old you are or how independent you pretend to be. When your parents tell you that they're considering a divorce, you turn into a terrified little child. When my parents first told me, I didn't sleep for 2 full weeks. I was so confused and afraid. All I wanted to do was crawl into their bed like I used to during thunderstorms or after waking up from a nightmare. The only problem being that I was in New York and their bed was in Ohio. And they weren't in it. You know what would be nice, Dad says, draping his arm over my shoulder? If you took us upstairs and showed us the newsroom bullpen where all the action happens. I couldn't agree more. It would be nice if all that big city newsroom action were still there. I shift a quick glance to CCG, wondering what he might be making of this conversation. He knows that the Daily Post is no more, but to his credit, he doesn't throw me under the bus, subway, or coffee cart by pointing out this inconvenient truth to my parents. Yes, says Mom, that's one of the reasons we came. She holds up a few shopping bags, and I see Marshall's holding two as well. Dad smiles painfully. But, sweetie, we were really hoping you could give us a tour of the Daily Post. They do allow tours, don't they? Dad asks eagerly. Sure, to potential renters who want to move into the vast empty office space. The problem is, since the news of my joblessness had come hot off the heels of the news of their separation, and some equally distressing news about my younger brother Ferguson, which I can't even think about beginning to explain right now, I made the executive decision to keep my parents out of the employment debacle group. It was dishonest, I know, but I had saved up a little, and at that time I wasn't behind on my loans or my rent. My, how times have changed. And I wanted to spare them the additional stress. In fact, given that things are about in the same place and my stress level is a tad higher, I still do. Well, you know I love to, I fudge, especially since you came all this way to, surprise me. But the office is closed. What a drag, huh? Not a lie, exactly. It is closed at the moment, and will remain thus for every moment following, ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Fortunately, they never heard of the old newsroom saying, "The news never sleeps." In the case of the Daily Post, the news seemed to have fallen into an artificially induced coma. I sneak another peek at CCG, who is watching me closely. I mean, unless he's a complete idiot, he's already figured out my little scam. But so far, he doesn't seem to be judging me harshly for it. He even looks amused. There's this tiny smile on his face, which, even at the throes of this pending catastrophe, I can't help but notice it's awfully sexy. That's a shame, my mother says, crestfallen. And we're leaving tonight, so we won't be able to see it tomorrow, Dad says. And I can tell he's wallowing in it. Come on, Dad, get over it. You're leaving tonight? That is a shame, I say shamelessly, hoping I don't sound unashamedly relieved as I feel. Yeah, your mother can't stay, says Dad. She's got an R&D meeting tomorrow with the Chinese Defense Department, and well, you know. He trails off, and I know it's because he really has nothing to do besides fix himself waffles at the make-your-own-breakfast bar in the crummy hotel he's been living at during the separation. Heartbreaking as it is, my survival instincts kick in. Well, there's always the next visit. In the meantime, let's see about finding you two crazy kids a cab to the airport. Mom laughs. Clarissa, we just got here. We don't have to leave that fast. You don't? I gulp. Not without taking you to dinner, Dad chimes in. Besides, if we can't see that corner office of yours overlooking the Big Apple, at least we can meet that terrific entrepreneur boyfriend you've been bragging about. Wait, so now there's a terrific boyfriend? I lied about having one of those too? It takes a second for the synapses in my brain to spark before I realized when I told Mom and Dad that I had a boyfriend. It actually wasn't a lie. I did at one time have a boyfriend. The terrific part? Not so much. Just a case of delusional behavior and poor character judgment on my part. Norm. My parents are talking about Norm. I flick yet another look at CCG, curious to see how the mention of a terrific boyfriend is sitting with him. 3 seconds ago, I was making out with a coffee cup in an attempt to entice him. Now this revelation. I try to meet his eyes, hoping to see devastation or at least disappointment. But at the moment, he's attending to an aging female corporate warrior wearing a bright red Eli Tahari business suit who is sidled up for an herbal tea. So I can't get a read on his reaction. Here's another confession. In addition to not telling my parents that the Daily Post was no more than a journalistic memory, I also neglected to tell them that the guy I gushed about before as my one and only had been demoted to my ex with serious stalker tendencies. Freaking Norm. Let me take a moment here to give you the lowdown on that failed entanglement. Met him, loved him, mostly his looks, which are Ashton Kutcher-esque, dated him, moved in with him, realized it was a ginormous mistake, and dumped him. Norm seemed great at the beginning, but once I made the commitment to him, he became an emotional and financial parasite, In 3 short months, he went from holding doors open for me to wordlessly leaving his dirty socks on the kitchen counter to wash. The entrepreneur part to which my father is referring would be all decked out, the custom skate deck company Norm dreamed of establishing. He got as far as pulling together 7 layers of veneer and mixing a bucket of Gorilla Glue in the middle of our apartment. I rolled up my sleeves to dig in and help, but when his left hand and right foreleg got stuck in the wooden layer sopping with fast-drying glue, I knew we were in trouble. My foot almost got caught in the sticky stuff when I tried to pry him off. It was like a bad game of permanent twister. Ripping the hair off the side of his right leg almost hurt me as much as it hurt him, especially when I had to listen to his baby-like screams. I could tell Norm was traumatized when he planted himself permanently on the sofa, video game controller in hand, saying he needed think time to reconsider his career goals. It wasn't like the rest of our time together was so peachy, so when non-performing Norman started hanging out late at night with all sorts of bogus excuses, I knew it was time to cut my losses. Au revoir, Norm. It seems to me that when I think about it now, I would have never gotten involved with Norm, except it was right after things fell apart with Sam. Who's Sam? He's my childhood friend, homie, and ladder-wielding best bud. Sam had the enduring habit of throwing an extension ladder against my house and climbing in and out of my bedroom window any time of the day or night throughout our formative years. A groundbreaking innovation in parental avoidance that made it amazingly easy for us to hang out whenever we wanted. I know that sounds pretty salacious, but it wasn't. As you expect, Sam's ladder technique was a major source of controversy in the neighborhood and among my friends in school, who thought it was kind of outrageous that he could get away with it. No one believed that we were just friends, as in a boy who is a friend and not a boyfriend. A friend is someone you're close to and have feelings for, but not those kinds of feelings. In other words, a friend is someone you haven't had sex with, and back in those days, remarkably, that wasn't in our minds. Sam and I never fought, except once, the night we went out on a test date. Sam's idea, and it was a miserable fail. It was good, it was bad, and by the end, when we kissed, it was ugly. The goodnight kiss of death, we used to call it. I never told Sam, but I was secretly insulted after that kiss. First of all, I was unprepared. Second, I never thought risking a good friendship for a kiss was worth it. Third, I like to think I'm a good kisser, but I didn't have the chance to try it. Post-kiss, I was totally confused and his words stung me. Sam didn't understand. Although he had those more than a friend feelings before he kissed me, I had those same feelings after we kissed, and that made me pause. If we kissed again, who knows where it could have gone? Who am I kidding? I know exactly where it could have gone. It felt like I was kissing my sister. If I had a sister, he had said, and I almost never forgave him for saying that. That was the only time I ever considered shoving that ladder off my windowsill, regardless of the consequences. But I held back. Instead, we friend-zoned each other pretty permanently. Fortunately, my parents were totally oblivious to Sam's ladder. Don't ask me how. I think it's because Marshall never did any work around the house or in the garden, and he's pretty oblivious in general. I suspect Mom knew, she just didn't want to deal with it because, well, Sam and I were just friends and she could tell. After our miscued date faded from memory, Sam once again became the human equivalent of a golden rayed sunrise or slow-burning sunset. Total zen. It was impossible to feel anything other than relaxed around Sam. He was my soulmate. There, I said it. He wasn't just the person I could spend the rest of my life with. He was the person I couldn't imagine spending my life without. Sam Anders was the one person who knew me so well that he used to scare the crap out of me. Everybody but me knew we'd get together eventually. It was glorious. It was beautiful. It was unforgettable. And when that summer ended, it was over. We never had one single fight or argument or even heart-to-heart about where we were going. If he walked in today, I think we'd kiss and jump at each other's bones as if not a day had passed. But as far as I can tell, he's gone, which feels so wrong. That was not how it was supposed to turn out. I can't help but wonder if I screwed up. Who knows? Is it possible that even soulmates are not meant to be together? If I'm being honest about Norm, I was on the rebound. I made the mistake of falling for the first gorgeous skater dude who reminded me of Sam. Clearly, I was hoping for Sam 2.0. Pretty textbook, I suppose. Maybe next time I'll go for someone in finance. Prying Norm from his self-inflicted Gorilla Glue debacle opened my eyes to our hopeless relationship. I realized I could get stuck too, so I told Norm it was over. His response? I think you're trying to ruin our relationship. Almost instantly, I realized that breaking up with Norm was only the beginning. I packed up and answered our roommate ad for a cozy little walk-up office conversation in Fidei. The roommate, Felice, turned out to be a real creepster of the single white female variety, but she thankfully decided to throw in the towel on making it in the big city and move back with her mom and dad in Scarsdale. Phew. Real-life nightmare stalker movie avoided. Not having a roommate is unbelievably awesome. And hey, I'm only 2 months behind on my rent. Unfortunately, moving across town, not returning Norm's phone calls, and completely withholding my affection was apparently too subtle of a hint for old Norm. He hasn't been able to mentally process the breakup. Just last month, I had a temp job at an office in Times Square. As I was leaving for home, walking just behind the TKTS booth beneath the big red glass stairway, Norm jumped out of nowhere and dropped to his knees in front of me and hundreds of total strangers. Everyone started cheering, and I couldn't figure out why until I looked up at the massive digital screen over American Eagle. There was Norm at my knees, proposing, holding up some kind of Cracker Jack ring. We were on a screen big enough for everyone in New York to see. I turned away, pretending I didn't know him. When the crowd started to boo, I thought they would lynch me. Like always, I found myself wondering what Sam would think. Well, Clarissa, don't you want to give him a call? I hear Mom say. Who? I asked, wondering if she added mind reading to her repertoire. After all, who knows where Sam is right now? Your boyfriend, Mom adds, snapping her fingers in front of my face, shattering my far-flung musings. Why don't you give him a call? My boyfriend? I asked. We have just enough time to eat an early dinner and get to know him a bit, Dad says, checking his watch. Right, I remember. I'm in the midst of a surprise parental guest appearance. Well, see, I would, but... I sputter. Think fast, Clarissa, think. But what? Prompts Dad. The look in his eyes is so sad. Dad seems to be spinning in some psychological hamster wheel of anticipated disappointment. I can't take it. But... maybe it's the creative spirits that haunts this beloved place, or maybe it's me wanting to make my dear old dad happy. But I'm suddenly inspired. But I don't have to. Before I lose my nerve, I dash around to the opposite side of the coffee cart and throw my arms around CCG. Because here he is! This is him! This is... Time freezes, and I realize I have no legitimate way to introduce him. I mean... he's the guy I refer to with a 3-letter acronym because I don't know his name. My mouth is open, and it feels like it's been that way for weeks. Looking over to CCG in desperation and back over to my parents and back to CCG, cluelessly lost in time, sinking fast. Fortunately for a naturally shy and quiet person, CCG seems to have a knack for thinking on his feet. Without missing a beat, or stopping to ask why we've suddenly gone from fingers brushing to full embrace, he smiles. I've been wanting to meet Clarissa's parents for a while now, he says, breaking my awkward Twilight Zone moment. I'm Nick, he adds, and extends his hand to my father. Nick, cries my mother. It's lovely to meet you. I thought you said his name was Norm, Dad whispers to me. He's right. I did. 'Cause it was. So I improvise. Well, Norm was actually just my pet name for him, I explained feebly. Because, you know, he was the guy I normally spend time with. And then, of course, he came to represent the norm by which I judge all other guys. And normally, Nick cuts me off with a wink. I think they get it, hun, he says easily. But yeah, she just calls me Nick now. Oh, well, glad to know you, son, Marshall says, making everyone a bit uncomfortable. This son thing is classic Marshall Darling lingo. He called the bully who beat up Ferguson on the school bus son. That's the guy who kinda became my first boyfriend, aka Clifford Spleenherfer. Dad called the paperboy son even after the kid grew up and went to college, got married, had 3 kids, came back home, and sold my dad a home insurance policy. He called guys working at the gas station son, no matter what their ages are, even when they're older than he is. But Nick is a grown man, not to mention a perfect stranger. Even though I'm cringing, CCG doesn't appear to be put off by it. In fact, he looks as though he finds it charming. Truth be told, I find CCG totally charming. If this were a romantic novel, he'd have swept in on a white stallion instead of a coffee cart. But this is reality, and the bottom line is, he came to my rescue when I needed him. And here's the best part. His name is Nick. Now I know. In a New York minute, my most cherished micro-relationship has massively leveled up. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Things I Can't Explain, a Clarissa novel written by Mitchell Kriegman. If you want to read the book for yourself, then follow the links in the description for you to pick up a copy, whether it be physical, digital, or audio. Tune in this coming week as we're going to be having a little book club discussing about this chapter. Thank you so much for joining in. Hope to see you next week. Thank you for listening.